Destiny 2's gameplay reveal had massive amounts of news, but one of the biggest items came in a very small package, in a few sentences here or there, and that's to the major changes that they're doing to Crucible. They didn't make a big deal about this in the gameplay reveal, but it is a big deal. What's going on, everybody? It's Freeedo here for your Destiny, and since this is my first video on the channel, I wanted to take a little bit of time to introduce myself and my history with Destiny, but more importantly, my lack of history with Destiny. When the next-gen consoles came out, I actually had switched entirely to PC, so Destiny 1 was a game that I missed out on. But I have played many other games that the Destiny franchise has been influenced by: Diablo 2, Diablo 3, Borderlands 1 and 2, Halo as well, obviously. And when we decided to get into Destiny 2, I was doing it purely as a gamer, looking to enjoy the casual aspect of it. I had been heavily invested in the esports side of other games, like Black Ops 2, CSGO, and now Overwatch, but I wasn't having some big expectation that Destiny 2 was going to be a very competitive game because the Crucible and Destiny 1 had a lot of, let's just say, casual elements. And it's not a dirty word to say, but it's just simply a more forgiving game, not really made to structure in the most confrontational nature. But based upon the things said at the gameplay reveal, along with multiplayer gameplays that have been leaked out coming from the event, I'm not exactly sure if they have permission to post it from Bungie or not, which is why we won't be showing any on this channel for now, at least, until we know that it's okay to do so. But I can't unsee what I saw. And what I saw is a massive difference between Destiny 1 and Destiny 2's Crucible competitive multiplayer. The facts seem simple enough, but the ramifications are massive. They said it on stage. 3 key sentences that completely mold the experience in a different way, and you may or may not find this to your liking. First and foremost, the design philosophy of the Crucible. The word mastery was explicitly said, not accessibility, mastery. Mastery is a punishing thing. If you try to master anything, it means you're going to have a hard time doing so, inherently saying it's going to be a more competitive mode. But the actual changes that they made, turning every game into a 4v4 instead of a 6v6, as well as giving everyone information based upon the heavy ammo and the supers, as well as, and this wasn't mentioned in the event, but evident in the gameplay that's been revealed thus far, having much longer cooldowns on these abilities as well. All of this is re-engineering the focus of the Crucible multiplayer to be a much more hardcore experience, akin to the likes of other more competitive titles. If we try to step back and look at this objectively, to how the gameplay elements pan out in real time, I think it's somewhat of a combination of Halo and Black Ops 2. I say that because there's 4v4 and a bunch of interesting ability usage. There's limited power-ups. Heavy ammo is a crucial part of the competitive play, but it's not core like it might be in an arena shooter. But overall, all these things considered, you can expect Destiny 2 to play much more like the competitive side of Call of Duty and Halo, rather than a more casual experience that you might get from normal Call of Duty or the traditional Crucible in Destiny 1. And why is that? Well, inherently, changing the game mode to be from 6v6 to 4v4 is competitive in nature. Well, why is that? Well, the more players that are on a multiplayer map, the less responsibility each one has. And the closer you get down to a one-on-one scenario in like a duel from Quake Champions or something, that's going to be coming out soon as well, the more the player is in control. And the larger the team gets, the more teamwork is required, and the less that a single player can do, unless it's like Overwatch's structure where certain characters have these massive, powerful abilities that come into effect MOBA-esque style, but we'll leave that to the side. Just as a general principle, if we compare to like Battlefield, for instance, if there's 32 players on a team, it's much more about how the team coordinates with their pushes and getting people in the right position and doing the right thing than it is a single player's physical mechanical skill, because you could go on a massive killing spree, but it might not even matter for anything if the enemy tank is doing the right thing and yours isn't. There's larger scales to the entirety of the battle, whereas in a 4v4 context, it's much more competitive in nature. You could think of a quarter of the map is in your responsibility, whereas if you're the 32nd player on the team, a very small percentage, I'm not doing the math. I was told there's no math involved. Also, with only 4 players on your team, it's much harder for random occurrences to happen. It's much easier for an enemy player to be able to observe the movements and sound cues of what your team is trying to do. Far less surprise will happen inherently. All of this causes for the gameplay to be much more confrontational in nature, meaning that if you are actually good, you're likely to be able to shine through. And also, although tactics play a big role, it's much harder to hide behind your team, let them do the hard work, and you to be a serviceable player. This might actually be a problem for many Destiny players who aren't really competitive in nature. They're just there for the loot, which is what I thought I was going into before I found out that this might be one of the most competitive console games that's out right now. Now I'm perked up and excited. The downside might be that the community isn't really receptive to this type of hardcore experience. I mean, Halo died off eventually kind of for a reason. Easier games emerged, but the hope, of course, is that with all the other more user-friendly gameplay experiences inherent in Destiny 2, that the more competitive feeling multiplayer won't turn too many players off. And I think that's what's actually going to happen, because Crucible, as it was in Destiny 1, wasn't incredibly well liked. I think it was just serviceably well liked, whereas Destiny 2's multiplayer is much more likely to be loved and hated because it's so polarizing. Now, the other change, of course, was to the information on the HUD for the enemy player's supers. This is massive, of course, because just knowing whether or not your enemy is going to have a super or not completely changes the rules of engagement of how you go into the fight. In Crucible, oftentimes it felt like you would turn a corner and be surprised at every turn by how many times you can get insta-killed by a devastating ability. Well, Destiny 2's multiplayer is going to be a bit more calculated than that. And furthermore, as it turns out, energy weapons seem to have a specific elemental type in order to be able to take out supers, creating a dense level of interplay with some of these more powerful abilities. Now, speaking of powerful abilities, another thing that I don't think was mentioned in the gameplay reveal, but is incredibly evident in the gameplay that we've seen thus far, is that the specific Guardian abilities also are on a longer cooldown than they were in the Crucible. Now, you're not going to have a bead on every grenade or throwing dagger thrown. However, when these items have a longer cooldown, when you see one of your 4 enemies use one of these abilities, it's much easier to communicate and understand how much longer it will be until they have them up. This, of course, happens in Overwatch. When Roadhog uses his hook, you know there's 8 seconds. You can count it out in your head. You can feel it. You know when the next hook's going to be available. Now, from what we've seen thus far in Destiny 2, a lot of these abilities are even longer than of just a few seconds, and actually can span in between rounds of their Search and Destroy equivalent game mode, which is called Countdown. What this means is that the abilities in the game are balanced in such a way that they accent the gunplay. Destiny 1's Crucible, between the fact that there were 6 players on the map and they all had lethal abilities around every corner, getting to the gunplay took a bit of luck, really. Despite the gunplay elements feeling tight and responsive like they do in Halo, it felt a little bit more like the emphasis was on the ability usage. Now, of course, ability usage is going to be just as important as ever, but it's going to take mastery, of course, there's that key word again, of being able to manage these resources, because you don't get them constantly like before. You can't spam them as easily as you did in Destiny 1's Crucible. This is going to create some intricate skill gaps between players for a few reasons. Managing your resources appropriately is a massive part of being good at the game, but also, it's much harder to hide behind those abilities, and you're going to have some gun skill to not just get walked over. In order to do well in the Crucible now, a lot more of the competitive shooter experience that you might have got from learning a game like Halo is going to translate because, and this is for lack of a better word, there's far less crutches around every corner. You can't hide behind your teammates, at least not as easily. You can't rely solely on having abilities up frequently to be able to do the heavy lifting of your gunplay for you. Instead, you're going to have to get good at it in order to succeed. Are Destiny fans ready for this? This was a big surprise to me, as big as any other surprise. I didn't see this coming at all, but I think the proof is in the pudding. They're looking to make this an esports game, as well as the casual looter shooter that everyone loves. It's a bold strategy, Colin. Let's see how it works out for them. It's a big risk, and I gotta say, I respect it. It's not easy to do something that you know is going to be alienating a certain type of player, but I think based upon the feedback Destiny 1's Crucible got, it is the smarter route to try to at least appeal to a type of consumer. You can either make it more casual and more pick up and play and fun, and limit the amount of confrontational aspects of the multiplayer, or you can go the route they're going, which makes it feel much closer to competitive games we've played in the past. Well, that's been it for me. I hope you enjoyed my first video on the Your Destiny channel. I am but a humble PC nerd. I hope you accept me into your community. You know, sometimes game communities don't like foreigners, but I'll try my best to assimilate and become a guardian like the rest of you. I'm excited. I think with the multiplayer shaped this way, there is a lot of content that I all of a sudden can make based upon understanding some of the more intricate competitive aspects of esports games. And if not, I'll just enjoy the loot as well. Either way, I think Destiny 2 is shaping up to be a pretty cool experience. Linked in the description, you can check out our Your Destiny Twitter as well as our Your Destiny Discord server. Both just launched along with the channel. We have a fledgling community, but we look to put in the work to grow this channel and our community along with Destiny 2 as a game. I'm excited for the new project, and I hope you guys are as well. If you are, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. That's been it for me. I've been Freeedo for Your Destiny. I'll see you guys next time.